So in this video, we are going to see how we can implement validations in unmanaged scenario in ABAP RAP. We have already seen these validations in our previous managed scenario series. The way we have implemented validation there was quite different, but in case of unmanaged scenario, there are different specific methods which are provided by the framework to put your validation logic in. And one of the method is check before save method, where you can put your logic, and once this method gets executed successfully, means if there is no error or no failed in the validation, if you have put any, then the save methods will get triggered. And we already know the save method is used to send our transactional data to the persistent state. Let's learn more about this check before save method. Although we have already seen the functionality of this method in detail in our introduction video for unmanaged scenario. If you haven't watched that video, I will recommend you to please watch that video for better understanding. So there are two scenarios we already know by now. One is managed and unmanaged scenario. Managed, we have already seen how it works. So in managed scenario, the final check for all involved business object is done through the validations. We have already seen this thing technically as well. And if we want to understand, we can say these validations are called during the check before save method as well. But this method is not visible at that time because that's a managed scenario. But now, since we are working on unmanaged scenario, framework has given these method, and it is mandatory to implement these methods, but it is not mandatory to put any code in this method until and unless you want to put specific validations for any involved BOs. So this method is check underscore before underscore save method is having two different parameters. One is failed and one is reported. If the validation which you are putting is failed, then you need to fill this parameter. You need to return one value from this parameter, failed. You need to append this parameter. The second parameter is reported. For example, if your validation is failed, you have updated this parameter, the failed parameter, and now you want to return an error message onto the front end. Then you need to update the reported parameter as well. This parameter is used to send the error messages to the front end. You can add error message and that will be displayed onto the front end. Now this check before save method gets called during the save sequence. It doesn't get called at the time of interaction phase. So we have already seen all of these concepts in previous videos, mainly in the introduction video of this unmanaged. So interaction phase is different and save sequence is different. So this method belongs to save sequence of unmanaged scenario. Now if there are different more methods available along with check before save method, and one of the method is cleanup finalize method. But this is one method which specifically gets triggered based on the result sent by check before save method. What I mean by this is, if your scenario is failed or your validation is failed, in that case you filled failed parameter and you filled reported parameter. So as soon as this method returns you a failed parameter here in this parameter, or failed value, or this failed parameter is filled, then only in that case this cleanup finalize method will be triggered. this method will not trigger on any of the other scenario. This will only trigger if your check before save method gets failed because of your validation or whatever condition you are putting into. So this is an important thing. If you want to write any code, any specific code, your custom logic, in case this method gets failed, you need to write inside this method, cleanup finalize. Okay, so now let's see how we can implement this technically. Okay, so this is our application which we have created in our previous video or throughout this series. We do not have any record available currently. What we are going to do is we will put some check on this student age. We will put some validation along this field, and if it fails, then we will show an error message onto the front end. This is what we are going to implement now. Now, this is our application, and we have here our class, and this is our API class. So we are creating all of our types and all of our methods here in this API class, and we are calling them inside this student method. Now, one thing which we have done here is we have created one variable, global student, which is accessible inside this class only because it's a private here. Now what we want to do is we want to have this variable available outside of this class as well. It means inside of our behavior implementation class. So for that, very first thing what we will do is we will take this parameter out from here. Okay, so first thing is why we are doing this, because this GT student is getting updated in most of these methods, because we have used that parameter in one method and filled in one method, access in another method. So that's why we want to make this parameter as a public parameter now, so that we can use this in other class or in our behavior implementation class as well. Now, how we can do this is we need to make this public. So this is public section, and let's put that parameter here. This is done. Now activate. Okay, our class is activated. Now this parameter will be available in our behavior implementation class. So now let's move to behavior implementation class here, and the method which we are talking about in this video is check before save method, which is this one. So this method is not a mandatory method, as we have already seen. There is no code inside it. Still our application works. So it's not a mandatory, but if you want to put some validation, you can use this method. Now if this method is there, you need to implement this method as well. We have already implemented it. Now we will be writing all of our code in this method. So what we are going to do is, very first thing, let's see if the GT student is available here or not. No, it will not be available like this. What we need to do here is let's copy this and create a temp parameter for this. Copy and underscore temp. Now what we will do is, whatever is there in that global table, GT underscore student, see now this is available. So whatever is updated inside this because of any create or edit or update method, that will be available to you in the check before save method. So now everything latest updated data will be available in GT student temp. Now first thing we need to check is if not this is initial, and if now we will be writing whatever validation we want to have here. Now our data will be in this method, in this parameter. Let's read this table. LFS underscore student temp. Since we will be creating one student at a time, that's why we are putting index 1. Let's check if this is assigned. If this is assigned, then we are good to put our validation. See, all of these fields are now available, but we are interested in student age. Let's put a check age should be greater than 22. If it is less than, okay, so if it is less than, then what we are going to do is, let's do an F2 here. See, we have changing parameter which is failed and reported. So we will be filling the values inside these parameters. What are the things we have here? You need to click on derive types. So failed is having student and result entity, and inside the student what we are having is, click on again derive types. See, these are the parameters which we are having inside the student. What we are going to fill is any of the one field, mainly a key field is always there. So we will be filling this field saying that whatever record coming with this ID is failed. That's what we are going to do now in this parameter. So let's copy this parameter, and how to update it? We will be updating it with append value hash, and we have the ID field here. ID is equal to what value we are going to put here, whatever record is failed, ID. And where we need to update it? We need to update in to failed student. This is done. Now the second parameter here is reported. Let's see what reported type is. So let's go to derive type. We have in reported, we have student, results and other parameter as well. But currently we are need to show error message for the student. So let's see the derive types here. See, here as well we have so many parameters which we can update, but main parameter is again the ID field, and the other important parameter here is percentage message. So this parameter will have your error message, whatever you want to send to front end. So we are going to update these two parameters for reported student entity. Okay, so let's do that. Again, we will be updating the value, and first parameter is ID, which we already know, we have updated it here. So let's copy this and paste. Now the second parameter here which we need to add is percentage message parameter, and to update the message, this is having an interface, and we have a method new message and new message with text. New message you can use if you have message ID, message number and all those things we do not have here. That's why we are using this new message with text, which has two parameter. One is severity and your error text. So let's use this one, and we have got these two parameter to be updated. Let's remove the comment. It is already saying severity is error. Now here we just need to update the error message. Let's put age is less than minimum required 22. Now where to update this append structure or the append? Just like we have updated to failed student, we need to do this to reported and student, and that's it. This is done. Now let's activate. So our method is created and it is activated. Now let's run our application and see if it works. Click on refresh. We do not have any data. Let's create one record quickly. Student age we are putting 12, which is less than 22. Course duration 5. Status is active. Now our expectation is as soon as I click on the create method, that validation should trigger and it should show an error message. See, we are getting an error message here. Age is less than minimum required 22. Also we are getting an error message here. Now let's see how we can put multiple error messages here. This is only one, but if you have multiple fields to put the validation on, let's see how we can do that as well. It's very simple. Now again, this is one scenario. Let's copy this quickly and put it here, and this time let's see, the status should be active always. So let's take the status, student status. If student status is equal to ABAP false, then we need to update the error message here. Set status to active. Rest we do not need to do anything else. Let's activate this. It is activated. Now discard the changes. Again, let's create one record quickly. Student age is 12. Duration is 5, and this time I'm not checking this because we have a validation onto this field. And click on create. See, we got two different error messages here. Set status to active and age is less than the minimum required 22. Now let's close this and update the age to 23, and let's see what happens. Create. See, now we are getting one error message only. Now let's activate this and click on create. Yeah, our record is now created successfully. Now let's see one thing which we have talked about in our slide, which is cleanup finalize method, and that cleanup finalize method is here. We know that this method gets triggered if this check before save method returns an error. Okay, so let's put a breakpoint here and refresh the breakpoint. This method will only get triggered when there is an error written from this method. If there is no error, then this method will not be triggered. Let's see if that is true or not. Let's go back and click on go to edit, click on edit button. I'm updating an age to 24, which is still a valid record, but in that case the expectation is this cleanup finalize method should not be triggered because there is no error here. Click on save. See, this method didn't trigger. Now click on edit and change the age to 12, which is a validation. So validation should be triggered here, and since check before save method will return an error, in that case this cleanup finalize method must be triggered. Let's see, click on save. See, our breakpoint hit and this cleanup finalize method is getting triggered here. Okay, do an F5, F8 and see, we got the error message. So this method always gets triggered or only gets triggered when there is an error from check before save method. So that's all for now in this video, and if you like the content, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you.